one of the biggest problems in our entire healthcare system. We have a super reactive healthcare system all over the world in every country, and we mainly act if it's already too late. And those solutions, of course, only for, I would say, a very niche target group. Even if we are in a bubble and it seems like everyone is obsessed about health, we are still in a bubble.
Welcome to Be Well. Today we're joined by Leonard Rinser, a healthcare builder and community builder. He's co-founder of Glaze Health, serves as global healthcare executive for Sigma Squared across various countries. Leonard, you are a venture partner, you've built deep tech accelerators, and you've had the chance to see actually a lot of startups from close sight. And your mission is to enable a prevention-driven healthcare revolution. And it's great having you on the show today. And I'm very excited because today we're going to do something special. We're not just going to talk about you, but we're going to talk more broadly about the industry and specifically about AI and how that actually relates to healthcare, to longevity. And very excited to learn more about it myself, and hopefully the audience also going to learn something. But maybe to get started, for listeners new to you, who have never met you, who are you? What are you building today? And give us a little introduction about yourself, and welcome again to the show.
Thank you so much for the invite, Tobi. Super happy to be here. And also thanks for the flexibility of adapting the topic a bit, because I think there are definitely quite a lot of podcasts already out there where I just talk about what I did and what I'm doing. So I'm really looking forward into diving deeper into a topic to, maybe provide even more value add than just talking about what I did and what I do. But maybe shortly what I do and why I'm so obsessed about health. I'm Leo, a venture builder. So I build, multiple ventures in the life science and healthcare area. I've built an own venture with Glaze Health, where we developed an algorithm for metabolic topics and especially focusing on diabetes. Then I built quite a lot of deep tech companies together with super nice research organizations. And then next to that, I'm consulting some other players in the space. That's more like a side hustle I do from time to time. And saw quite a lot of different areas and perspectives already. And when people want to describe me, first in the beginning, they always describe me, hey, he's the founder of XYZ. Now they're always like, hey, this is Leo the health guy, because they are too bored of telling what I actually do. But what I actually do is building ventures in health and longevity, making sure that prevention and sustainable health has the right approach and to drive this topic forward.
Great. And you've also been building already in that space for quite a while. So I'm very excited to have that conversation with you today. Maybe to get started, what actually pulled you into, let's say, the healthcare and longevity space? Was there any personal trigger that sparked, your interest in that space? Because oftentimes I notice that there's a great founder market fit when people operate or work in that space. So is there anything you would like to share about it?
I think for me, it was back then more like an interest. I was super curious when we examined the human heart in school. I think it was in 9th grade. And I was not too interested in learning. And when we did that in biology, I got all the books that were available and literally sat down, and my mom was super astonished why I started reading all the stuff and even stuff in Latinum. So it was crazy because I was so interested in the entire topic and dived super, super deep into how does the actual human heart work, what's there behind, what's the biology. And I realized, okay, I have definitely an obsession of understanding how the human body works. And I think if I wouldn't have like a short university visit to see how studying biology and studying medicine, or what doctors do, are about, then I probably in the end would have also ended up studying probably biology. But I realized maybe that's not the most interesting topic to me for studying. Still, if I'm super interested into health, because I'm more on the side of building projects and actually understanding how create solutions in that space. I was already, I think, always obsessed about building products for some problems that I encountered. And yeah, I would say that that's my angle. I was super excited about learning about the human heart. And from then on, it was just going deeper and deeper. Every project that I did in university was about health. I built a health assistant back then for elderly people, then for performance driven people, which is probably back then I built something. I never brought it to the market, of course, because back then I had literally more knowledge about building products, but less about entrepreneurship and building ventures. But it was probably something like the Whoop. Literally also printed it out, and it looks pretty similar to the Whoop, what I imagined back then, but sadly didn't bring it to the market. And I think that's how it all started. And then from time to time, I got deeper and deeper and deeper into it, from Fraunhofer, working with a lot of scientists and researchers over quite some time on those problems from the deep tech angle, then building my own company. And from that, I went deeper and deeper into the entire health bubble. And of course, I was also always interested in exercising, nutrition. I was very privileged to have a family where nutrition was super, super focused to be healthy. So yeah, I got like a lot of external influence too on being in the health space in the end.
Great. So now we understand one part of the story, and now we can also smoothly transition over to our topic, which is actually AI and the use case of AI in prevention. Why or how did you, what was maybe your personal path to, let's say, applied AI, and why is now the moment for applied AI in health and longevity more broadly?
Yeah, maybe why I also come from the angle of applied AI and why I think that's the interesting part. I got into AI more from the field of not, okay, this is how foundational models work, but more from the field of, hey, this is what AI can do. And there are application fields of AI in health. And I got super, super interested when I saw all the possibilities, when I experimented a lot in the beginning with ChatGPT, then later on with other models, then also went into research what's out there. I think one of the main reasons where I was super excited was more lately when Microsoft launched their chain of debate model in healthcare with their super intelligence medical super intelligence approach. That was the moment where I was like, okay, wow, health will be AI based, or AI based will the future of how we deal with health in a way, when it's about the knowledge that we have. And then I'm working currently, I can't go too much into detail, but I'm also working with a managing director and board member of a big clinic. And here I do a lot of application topics with AI, how you can use AI in healthcare, especially from the perspective of a clinic since over a year now. And that was the moment where I really realized what an insane potential AI has in health. And especially if we think beyond just being, I don't know, B2C applications or only documenting applications where you ease out the process of documentation for doctors. And I think that was just a moment where I realized, okay, AI will change a lot in the future, and health will mainly be AI based.
Maybe quick question. Would you also say that maybe AI or the pace of change in AI is oftentimes maybe underappreciated? I mean, more broadly in society, but also specifically in the health and longevity space. Is that the case, or?
I think it's a very interesting question, because on the one side, I think it's, how to say it? On one side, it's a bit overhyped in general, but on the other side, we still underestimate the potential. It sounds a bit weird, but in the end, I think AI in general is a bit overhyped, but we still underestimate what is possible if you apply AI in the right way. So I think that's also the reason why I say applied AI in health, because the potential of AI lies in the finding the right application and putting it into relation with the right problems and then building solutions on that. I would say in general, of course, we are in a huge hype cycle when it comes to AI. We also talk a lot about the AI bubble. And of course, this is also in health and longevity. But on the other side, I think the application of AI in health and longevity is still underestimated. What is possible if we really build agentic systems that can support us in making informed decisions, and that really can be our also our personal coach in every possible area. And I think that's there, this potential is insanely huge.
Let's move on. I mean, those LLMs, they rely on data, right? And what you hear in the entire health and wellness space is that we are great at collecting data. We have tons of data. We have all our wearables and tons of firms coming out that promise you we're going to collect data, but we're less great at maybe putting that data into the right context, specifically if we're consumers, right? What are we going to do with that data? What's your view on that? And how do we actually go from, let's say, nice dashboards and nice data into, let's say, actually tangible action in our daily lives?
That's a super important question. And I think this is literally the point where you make data more useful, or where you also realize later on that some data is probably more useless than you thought in the beginning. Because, for example, I saw it when we did our topic in the metabolism space. We analyzed a lot of glucose data, so blood sugar data in the end. And what we realized that, of course, there are an insane amount of changes, and whatever you do affects your glucose in a way, but you always need the context. If you don't have the context about, okay, I, for example, went to bed way later. I had a late meal. I went out for exercising. Everything action of this influences your data and how it behaves in the end. And if you just look at the glucose curve without any context, you have no clue. You don't know what happened. You just see, okay, there is a spike. Maybe then my blood sugar dropped. But what led to that drop? What led to that spike before that? And I think that's the super interesting point. And I don't want to go too deep on glucose on that in that topic, but just to put or to give another example, in that case, it's super interesting because some person can, for example, eat brown rice and their glucose spikes like hell because their our metabolisms are super different from each other. And another person can eat brown rice and there is no spike, but it's completely normal. So if we don't have that context, we will not understand what happened in the end and what led to that spike or that drop. And this is just an example for glucose levels, but you can take the same example also for your heart rate, for your blood pressure, for everything. And in the end, also things are interrelated. So your heart rate in interrelation to your glucose levels tell you also so much. Like in our solution in the end, in the algorithm, we also made sure that we need to, or we realized that we need to put the heart rate in relation to the glucose level, because if we then see how high was the heart rate and to which change this led in the glucose, we were able to make predictions or even not. And I think that's a huge topic here.
I mean, it's very interesting. I think, one or another aspect that people are maybe struggling with in that context is more broadly, data anxiety, right? You personally you have all that data, and oftentimes maybe you only have a couple of biomarkers that you're measuring and you become anxious, right? You're not seeing the entire picture. It's maybe the wearables. You're seeing, oh, I didn't sleep that well. How do you address maybe that topic? How do you prevent maybe even worse behavior at the end of the day?
I think this is a super important topic because we have, for example, orthosomnia, where you're so obsessed about your sleep score that you actually it's diagnosable. So it's possible to diagnose that you have orthosomnia, so that you sleep way worse because you focus so much on your sleep data and optimizing your sleep data. And I think this is an example of how also data, or in the end variables, can harm you. Because I also know some people in my environment that I worked with, or where I coached them for a time, not professionally, but more from the perspective of, hey, they asked me something and I was like, yes, of course I can help you with some tips and tricks on that. And I realized there were some people that were super anxious, and they looked every morning. The first thing they did was picking up their phone and checking, how did I sleep? And if that's the thing, the first thing you do in the morning, and you see like a number that is definitely more depressing than motivating, your entire day can be done. Or maybe not that worse, but your next half an hour is like, why did I sleep so bad? What was actually the problem? And I think the problem first is here that people are sometimes a bit too over obsessed about one-time insights, so real-time insights, instead of looking at trends over a longer term of time. And if you look at trends, of course, if your sleep score decreases over time, over an entire week or over an entire month, there is something you should look into and maybe think about, what did I change that my sleep score decreased over the last days? Like for one day, it could even be like, hey, it was just maybe you haven't had the best day, or you trained too much, and that's the thing in the end. And I think in the end, what makes the difference here is also putting in context again, looking on data over a longer term. And what's also important is, if you realize that something is off, then maybe look at it over a longer term of time and then see, does it change? Does it get better, or does it get worse? And if it gets worse, then of course you should maybe take a closer look and change something. If it gets better again, then it was just a short effect where you, I don't know, did something that wasn't perfect on that day for your sleep score. Like, of course, that's a very stupid example, but for example, you had a glass of wine and the alcohol just decreased your sleep quality immensely. So I think that's the point where you should look at. And the second point, and that's where AI comes in again, is putting things into relation and asking, are there anything, is there a pattern that you can see why I slept worse? Is there an experiment that I can try to sleep better? So it's more about understanding where you can take action, instead of just realizing, okay, there is something bad and now I have a bad day because I think I'm not healthy.
I mean, Leonard, one thing we are observing, I assume, probably you have better insights, is that people or consumers are also taking a lot more responsibility by their own, right? They are going on, platforms like ChatGPT and trying to self-diagnose. I think there was a Harvard Business Review even listing sort of the most used use cases, but we would have to verify that. Anyways, people are doing it for mental health problems, but also for other issues related to health. How do you view that, let's say, consumer empowerment? And also, I mean, we have tons of firms coming out that are promising, we're scanning healthy people oftentimes, who are doing blood tests and all that kind of stuff. And AI is being used to actually get those results oftentimes faster and making those things a lot more accessible. Investors are loving it. What's your view on that consumer, let's say, empowerment rush that we are experiencing?
So first, I love it because it's something pretty awesome that we see. Secondly, I also see it sometimes a bit critical. We just talked about the orthosomnia topic. If there is one thing that is not perfect, some people will probably be super alarmed and be like, what should I do? I don't know what I need to do. Some values are like, some biomarkers are bad. What do I actually need to do now? And if they don't get the right support afterwards, that could lead also to a difficult situation. If you get the right support and the right recommendations, where you also have, after all those testing opportunities, a situation where you can sit down with a healthcare professional, or if you get access to an AI model, if we have the chain of debate models that are in the end then also in a way licensed for literally health coaching, then you can literally look into it, and then you can get actions out of it and get actionable steps, and you can make informed decisions. If you just get the bunch of data and you don't know what to do with the data, I see it pretty critical, because it will do one thing, and that's, it will overwhelm people like hell. And that's a problematic topic on that side, because if we just overwhelm people because they have a huge amount of data and they don't know what to do, it will not lead to better health outcomes, but it will just confuse people. And we need to be honest, of course, those tests, and if you probably think about like MRI scans or so, are more done by people that are really interested into the topic and also are open to educate themselves around it, then it's something different. But if you don't educate yourself and find out what actionable steps you can take or get recommendations from that solution, then sometimes it can also not have not so beneficial effects, I would even say. But in general, I think it's a great topic, and it addresses the topic, one of the biggest problems in our entire healthcare system. We have a super reactive healthcare system all over the world in every country, and we mainly act if it's already too late. And those solutions, of course, only for, I would say, a very niche target group. Even if we are in a bubble and it seems like everyone is obsessed about health, we are still in a bubble. It helps definitely people to understand their health better. But in the end, if we put it to the entire population, this is definitely a niche of quite a few people only. And for them, it's amazing. But we will also see like I would say there will be a bigger divide between super healthy people and not healthy people, because this is something that not everyone can afford, or I would even go further and say only few people seen on the global population can afford. And this is definitely something where we also need to address the ethic questions. How can we, maybe intervene in that case, that also people with less income have the access to those solutions where they can make more informed decision and also act more proactively on their health and prevention oriented.
I mean, I think hearing from what you said now, I think it gets very clear that there's going to be some form of hybrid model, I would say. So there's going to be human and also machine in place that is going to assist you or going to be your coach. AI is going to play a huge role. What is the right, let's say, human and machine split when it comes to coaching people, giving them, guidance based on the data that's being collected? How much do you need the human itself in the loop? Or can there be, let's say, an AI that is taking care of you entirely by itself?
I think right now we are still at that point where we need a human in the loop, and it will also stay for quite some time, because in the end we are dealing, like it depends on the claims we do. Like it depends all on the health claims. If you do health claims where it is more like going into the direction of medical recommendations, then of course you will always need a human in the loop for now to literally check on it. I'm pretty sure that with those chain of debate and medical superintelligence systems, we will see less and less people needed, but still there will be a person. And I think for now, it's also more a support system for doctors that helps them to coach patients in the right way and have a more personalized approach, because the AI or the technology enables them to give more personalized approaches or recommendations in the beginning. But later on, I'm pretty hyped to also think about that we will get to a point where we get so medical grade regulated AI that it's possible to take the human more and more out of the loop. And we are having more a digital coach and a digital agent that works with us on our health. And I think this will definitely come, but I think in the near future, there will definitely be a human involved. So we always will have the human in the loop model where someone checks it. Even, for example, if I develop a solution where I try to have some recommendations for nutrition or something else, I would always be like, hey, can someone double check it before it goes out as recommendation, just to make sure that the liability is addressed in the right way. But we will get there. The question is just how long will it take us? And I think not the technical feasibility will appoint, but it will more be the regulatory feasibility and the regulatory acceptance and the clinical validation of those systems that will make it take longer than it actually needs. Because I think from a technical feasibility, we will get there way sooner than we expect.
I mean, one thing which comes up, I mean, when we talk about prevention, it's a lot about lifestyle changes, right? So how do you, let's say, maybe even nudge people to change their behaviors? And for that, you have tons of tools or things out there, right? You have wearables, people are wearing auras, whoops, but you also have in certain applications or certain solutions are working with notifications or gamification tools. What's your view more broadly on all those tools out there? And what's maybe, what should we know to put, let's say, the impact of those tools into perspective?
First, I think cracking the human behavior and the behavioral science behind it, so that we change our behavior. If I will know how to do it, then you will see me in the news, because then I have $1 billion company. Because if I know how to do it, I will directly, immediately collect billions of dollars in funding, because I think the company that will crack human behavioral science will be one of the biggest companies out there. Because health is mainly about our behavior, behavior change and our habits. And if we look at the topic of good health, then it's mainly about it. It doesn't matter who you ask. In health, there are quite a lot of people that all of them have a different opinion on some topics. But if you think about what is the foundation of good health, I would say over 90% have the same opinion. And that is good sleep, good nutrition, that is physical exercise, and that is very, very underestimated stress management. And when we think about those 4 core areas, what we can change or how we can influence it is mainly through our behavior. It is how we get our nutrients, how we eat, how we go out and move. If we sit the entire day on our desk, or if we have a standing desk and every hour we stand for an hour, if we take a walk, if we go out, expose ourselves to sunlight, if we get enough sleep, if we also create habits that help us to slow down and also to recover in the right way and get some rest and ease out after all the stress. And I think this is all about behavior. The person or the company that will crack this topic of behavioral science will win. And how hard it is definitely something that I experienced myself. When we worked a lot on experiments when we built our algorithm and built a digital application behind it, and we tried to be like, what else should we take? Should we take a human? Should we take an animated character who talks in the end to the user? I don't know. Should it be in the end a notification that you get once a day? Should it be a notification that you get once a week? Do you have weekly goals? Do you have daily goals? When do you have your check-in? How do the notifications in general look like? This is also a question. Or do you want a more aggressive coach? Do you want a super motivating coach? And all those topics have to do with how you want other people to interact with you to make the right decision or to change your habits because someone nudges you in the right way. And there are a lot of companies who are trying everything in that space, and it's super, super hard. And there are only very, very few that succeed. And those few are companies that are not in healthcare right now. Because if we look at, I think best example is Duolingo. They do it in the best way possible. I think there are not many companies out there that are that good with user interaction and changing behavior and building good habits than they, because they create a form of social pressure with your streak. They have the right nudges. They also have the right length of their sessions so that you know, okay, this is the time I can invest and I feel good. Because in the end, we are so like addicted to the dopamine high, and our brain will always try to maximize this. And our entire world also is optimized to get as much dopamine as possible and to regulate ourselves, to be able to only focus on the things that really matter in the long term, where we don't get an immediate success feeling, is super hard. And I think a lot of companies failed addressing this. A lot of companies will fail. And it's just super hard to crack the topic of behavioral science.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned it, you're excited more broadly. And I think everyone in the industry is excited that there's tons of startups, businesses coming in, wanting to address, issues related to health and longevity. However, you have this, let's say, difference between what is a wellness feature and what is actually a regulated medical grade product, right? And I mean, the question is where do we draw the line, right? And how does it actually shape those product claims, right? I mean, marketing relies on promising a lot, but what promises can you actually make, right? How do you see that, or how do you view that topic?
I think it's a super critical topic, and we see even huge companies or pretty hype companies have challenges with that. I think it was not too long ago, maybe a month ago or so, I read an article where the FDA was in a clash, or where the FDA clashed with a feature of Whoop back then. I think it was more about a blood pressuring feature where they claimed it to not be a medical device, but they didn't even claim the wrong things. They just showed something on the screen that that in the end gave the perspective that in the end it could also be a medical product, or it could be a medical biomarker that they show. And I think this is where we saw that this will be problematic more and more. We see Apple is there. Apple also has quite features that are FDA regulated as medical devices. We see that in some products of Google. We can see that in, quite a lot of consumer devices that are tapping more and more into that regulated space. And we see also wearables like the Oura or the Whoop band being used in clinical trials at that validation and to tap that part. And why do they do it? Because in the end, health and the winners in health will care a lot about trust, because trust is in the end the game changer in health. Do you have the trust of your consumers and your customers, or don't you have it? And that's the reason why those medical claims, of course, are interesting if you want to win trust. But on the other side, they are super hard because they will definitely pretty soon clash with the regulators, no matter if it's the MDR or if it's in the US, the FDA. And that's also good that they are regulated. Like, from the side of the innovator, I don't like it because it takes ages. In our case, it took us also, like, we had our timeline, and it was like 2 years before we were able to have that regulation or that regulative approval. But it makes sense on the other side, because in the end, we want to make sure that people are healthier and have better lives. And in that case, we need to make sure that those solutions are safe. And in the future, we will see way more of those clashes where health claims, or I would call it wannabe health claims, where one company claims, no, this is not a medical device, but FDA or MDR will say, like, of course, this is a medical device. And we need to talk about this, and we need to regulate it in a way. And I think this will come more and more, but we will also see more and more features that will be certified and approved as medical devices, because it just makes sense. And if you think in the broader term, and I don't want to go too much into details, but if we think about the commercial model behind it, of course, regulated medical devices or regulated features are also more interesting regarding that topic, because then you also open a new pathway of commercialization, because you can also tap the topic of reimbursement. And that's, of course, also pretty interesting, because there is a ton of money regarding that commercialization approach. And it's pretty hard to navigate it. Do I go the commercial path where I go strictly to consumers, or do I go strictly to reimbursement? And I think we will in the future see more solutions that do a crossover, because they have a stable foundation in one market and they try to tap another revenue stream afterwards.
Interesting insight. And also, again, I think good transition to maybe the next topic I would like to talk about. I mean, now, how do we actually, the goal is, how do you make these things, or AI or applied AI in longevity and health, how do you make it actually scalable and ultimately trustworthy? And so one topic we have in Europe, right, we're very cautious about our data and giving away our data, and probably also more cautious and really emphasize or highlight the topic of trust. Who, from your view, who should own that data, and how do you actually build maybe even durable consent about that data?
I love the question. And on the other side, it's a pretty hard question to answer, because it taps quite a lot of different perspectives that I even have myself on this topic. Because on the one side, I think the data should be in the hands of the consumers and the users, because in the end, it's health data. It's sometimes even data that's more critical, or where you don't want to, where you may want to make sure that it's private. On the other side, I think this data is gold for companies to optimize solutions, to even train their models better, to fine tune the models to actually what you need to make them even more personalized. And I saw two pretty interesting companies on that topic. One company that used a blockchain approach. Not 100% sure, because sometimes when you talk about the blockchain companies, you can also do the same without a blockchain. But I think in that case, it really made sense to do it on the blockchain, where they made sure that the users get money if their data is being used by the company to make the model better. or to use their data to advance the product. And I think that's a pretty interesting situation when you can decide yourself if you want to give your data out. So the model gets fine-tuned and gets trained, but you get also a reward in exchange. In general, think and I hope that the data will still be available to the companies, because in the end, data is how you build better models, and especially data where you generate data in a context in the real world and then feed it back into the model to train it. That's high quality data, and it should be like, if you put it into context. For example, like I mentioned, if you make a photo of what you just had for dinner, it analyzes the carbohydrates that are in there, the fats and the protein units that are in there, and then based on that, it gets your glucose spike, and based on that, it puts it into relation. Super valuable data for a company to fine tune a model. But in the end, it's a lot of work for me too, to take a picture of everything and document everything. So it would be also nice if I get something in return. And maybe there are ways how we can make it better for everyone, how consumers and users benefit, even financially. But the companies themselves also benefit because they can use the data to train the models. So I think that was a pretty interesting approach that I saw there, and how they did it via the blockchain in the end. And I hope that we will see more of those concepts. And in general, it's a super sensitive topic, and health data needs to be protected. On the other side, and that's the last excursus I want to do on the topic, is we will see more and more on device models. For example, in my case too, sometimes I work with sensitive data, even myself, and I built an on-premise model that runs only on my PC, where I downloaded an AI open source model and put it here. And on my phone, the same. I have, like in my case, it was LLM Farm, and it's a local model where I can run models locally on my phone, so only I have the access. So running things on device so that it never leaves the device will be something that we will also see more and more in the future, and where I'm super excited and also do some experiments on the topic myself all the time.
Great. Now, not everybody does, experiments in the way you do them in society. And one big topic that we hear is sort of the person, or the idea of establishing one day a personal health OS. We have operating systems for anything, but not for our health. What has to happen to make that actually possible, and what role is AI going to play in that vision to make that possible?
That's the reason why I say health will be AI based, because I think AI will play the main role in this topic. Like this is a topic that will be so much about using data and interpreting data, and also making experiments based on the data you get to see if something is true or not true, and to tweak then the recommendations that you get. So I think AI is the absolute core of this health OS system that we will see. And on the other side, there are an insane amount of players already targeting this. When Whoop launched their Whoop 5.0, everyone was like, hey, super cool, it can now track different things. But for me, something else was way more interesting, because Whoop launched an advanced lab where they test also other biomarkers. And that was for me a sneak peek into the future, where I was like, interesting, Whoop fades away from only being a wearable provider, but goes more into being a holistic health ecosystem where you test different biomarkers, and will be able, because they have also the ecosystem, to put them into relation with each other and learn in the end. And I think probably every consumer health company that is out there will try this sooner or later. And that's exactly what we are seeing. This is what we saw when Oura acquired Veri, the glucose measuring platform, when they partnered with Dexcom to also put in the metabolic health topic, when the same is done by Superhuman and Ultrahuman, where they also have a ZGM and have the metabolic approach next to the normal biomarker approach. Now Whoop comes again with a Whoop Left. So all those companies are already working on establishing that health OS. And I think there will be not one single health OS, but there will be different providers. And I'm really looking forward to that, because I think this will change a lot in how we approach health. But on the other side, it will probably not be accessible to everyone, because in the beginning, if you just think about doing your blood testing 4 times a year, doing maybe a bigger scan, of course we have solutions that promise us that it will be only 300 euros, but in the end, more of the other solutions will be way, way more expensive to access it. And it's not accessible for everyone. And I think, sadly, our system will take years to adapt to it and integrate it into how we approach health on a systematic level.
Leonard, we're closely coming to an end, but maybe now because we're the podcast about the business of health and wellness, and we also have people who are just very curious and interested in health topics listening. What would you say, maybe, or if you had to recommend, or 3 first steps for listeners to start applied AI prevention sensibly, what would they be for people, to use them in their daily lives?
That's a good question. I think, first of all, I would think about how open are you to share your data? Because of course there are LLMs outside already that are super, super nice to do it. On the other side, I think they can, if they are more on the geeky side, also think about running models on device to have a safer area. But already tinkering around with ChatGPT has already super high potential. So if you just build an AI agent where you're like, hey, I want to analyze my food, and I want to build a model where I make a picture of everything I eat and I send it to ChatGPT and I'll be like, hey, analyze what are the different ingredients and how do I get my micro or macronutrients. And based on that, you already get a better feeling. And I would say in the beginning, start, of course, with the basics. I already talked about them: physical activity, sleep, nutrition, and stress management. And stress management would be probably the main topic. So don't stress too much about getting the perfect health metrics, because if you do, you will harm your health more than you think. Because if you stress out so much about your physical parameters and that everything needs to be in perfect state, you're completely neglecting that you also have a mental health. And if you stress yourself so much out, you're harming also your mental health. That would be the first topic. And then tinker around with ChatGPT and with all the abilities, and start with the basics first. Maybe don't think about, okay, what supplements should I take? But first think about what could be a training plan. How does my day look right now? How can I integrate, for example, a walk or other physical activity? And how can I then track my food that I take? And based on that, then later on tap deeper and deeper and deeper into the analysis that you do, and really develop a personalized plan to think about what are probably the macronutrients or the micronutrients that I still lack, where I should make sure to get them via a supplement or via other solutions. Or is there something, because I'm a believer in test first and then act. So what should I test maybe to get a better perspective on my body and what is happening in my body and what are my biomarker levels? And then based on that, act on it and make informed decisions. And you can, of course, use AI, but in the end, it's still your decision how much data you want to share with it. And if you want to use a model that is owned by OpenAI or Anthropic, or if you want to run it locally and have a more, I would say, data safe space.
No, very interesting. Also, the topic of mental health. The issue is with mental health, you don't see it like your muscles. It's not like you go to the gym and you see it, right? So talk to the founder of Keen Wellbeing. She's amazing, and she's envisioning to build actually somewhat like a gym, but for mental health. So that's
Super
also
cool.
a great contribution. Leonard, final question. Now we talked a lot about AI and how it can be used in the health and longevity space. I'll be wondering, as I mentioned, it's a business podcast, and I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. You're also an entrepreneur yourself, and you've coached tons of startups in that space. Why is that space so exciting? Maybe for entrepreneurs why should maybe entrepreneurs build in that space? What excites you about it? And if there's anything else you would like to share, feel free to do so.
Yeah. The possibilities are endless, and you're doing something good, and you can build a business that is, I think it's pretty it's pretty hard to find a business, or it's easy to find a problem to solve in health, but it's harder to find a problem to solve where you also have a viable business model and it works over the long time. But right now we have the most exciting time, especially with all the AI topics. We will see health as a more and more closed loop. And this is what is happening right now. And this is also what I love to work on, to think about how can we approach health as a system and close the loop. So make a closed loop in nutrition where you test, where you analyze, where you then supplement, and where you analyze again to see, is everything in line? Do I have everything that I need? And I think there will be also a lot of companies that will be not a leader in one area, that will sell a more holistic ecosystem where they start with probably maybe analytics or a diagnostic approach, but later will develop their own consulting services around that, and maybe later launch their own nutraceuticals or supplements in general. And I'm super excited to see this. And I think there is enough place for a lot of players, especially if they are evidence-based.
Amazing. Great way to end this podcast, Leonard. Thank you very much for your time. And I really enjoyed that special episode. And maybe we'll have time to catch up again sometime and talk about another topic that excites you and or us.
I hope so. Thank you so much for the invite and the great questions. It really was fun.
Thanks.